Hi, my name is Bill Cini, and I'm the lead apologist at Break Free Apologetics and the author of Intellectual Challenge to Evolutionary Biology and Cosmology, as well as 9 other books. The presentation you are about to see is a selection of arguments from my book that reveals the theory of evolution, aka philosophical naturalism or materialism, as perhaps the most absurd religion ever created by mankind. The theory of evolution is primarily a myth. Natural selection, acting on random variation, has been observed, but the theory of evolution is very limited in its capabilities, extremely exaggerated, misrepresented, and falls way short of explaining cosmological, chemical, and biological evolution, as well as the origin of the species. Belief in philosophical naturalism is spiritual in nature for those who willingly suppress the truth, and it is blind faith for those who have been deceived into believing the theory is a fact. Upon completion of this presentation, I hope you'll agree with me that evolution is absurd. Let's get started with my challenge to cosmic evolution. Virtually nothing you have been told about cosmic evolution is true. I start my argument by first defining the 2 possibilities for the origin of the universe. Then I will systematically show that philosophical naturalism cannot explain the solar nebula hypothesis, including terrestrial planets, the gas giants, the origin of stars, or organic and inorganic chemistry. On the screen are 2 opposing theories for the origin of the universe. First, let me say, it is not disputed by either theory that the universe had a beginning, that space-time, energy, and matter came into existence, and that the universe is expanding without the possibility of collapsing. Let me explain the chart. If naturalism is correct, then the universe started with matter and energy in the primary position. Energy evolved through a series of accidents that ultimately resulted in the created order, with mind and information in the secondary position. This scenario postulates that from nothing came inorganic chemistry, which in turn creates organic chemistry, resulting in everything we see, including you, without any intelligence. Naturalism's statement of faith says, in the beginning were the atoms and the void. Alternatively, if theism is correct, the universe started with mind and information in the primary position, with matter and energy in the secondary position. In this scenario, organic and inorganic chemistry, including the extreme complexity of life, is a direct result of intelligence. Theism's statement of faith says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. Everything in all of human experience points us to this, to mind being a primary in creation. Listen to the following story and see what conclusions you draw. You and I are fortunate to win a contest and receive a $1 million ride on the SpaceX to go to the moon. On our flight around the moon, we see a dome structure. The captain decides we should investigate. We prepare ourselves for a moonwalk, and when we arrive at the structure, we find a welcome sign, so we walk in. Once we're inside the dome, we come to understand that we don't need our spacesuits. The temperature, humidity, atmospheric pressure, oxygen, and every condition for life is there to sustain our existence. What is your logic, rationality, and intuition telling you about this story? Here's what it says to me. The building did not come into existence by itself. The structure and the life support systems required intelligence to build. Many fields of science and technology were involved in its construction, implying physical and intellectual resources from mining, manufacturing, engineering, architecture, and design. The biosphere was designed to meet the specific requirements of the current or potential residents. There was purpose for its construction. Our biosphere is exactly the same. The only logical conclusion is that intelligence was involved in creating both biospheres, validating the theism position of mind being primary. Materialism can't explain the origin of the universe, and it can't explain our solar system neither. According to the solar nebular model, approximately 4.6 billion years ago, there was a great cloud of dust that suddenly collapsed and began to swirl. Most of the dust collected in the center, forming the sun. The remainder of the dust swirled around the sun and began to condense, first creating clumps, then pebbles, then rocks, then boulders, asteroids, planetesimals, and then planets. The result of this clumping is the sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto, plus planetary moons, asteroids, and various other small objects. The problem is, there is zero evidence for this incredible deception, and the evidence against the model is right in the published literature. The solar nebula hypothesis has no materialistic explanation for planet formation. This is what the scientific literature says. Dust particles do stick together in space to create rocks. Once the rocks reach about 2 feet in diameter, they do not continue the process of expansion. Gravity is no longer strong enough to hold the particles together when they collide. The rocks are moving very fast, thousands of miles per hour, and when they hit each other, they smash and break apart. Instead of gravity pulling them together, the force of the collision breaks them apart. Watch almost any scientific animation, and you will see that this fact is omitted in the modeling. Not only is it omitted, but the models typically illustrate the rocks forming together when it is known they don't. This is blatant intellectual dishonesty. The scientific journals openly admit they are clueless about how planets form. According to Johansson, how this process continues from meter-sized boulders to kilometer-sized planetesimals is a major unsolved problem. Boulders are expected to sit together poorly and to spiral into a protostar in a few hundred orbits, owing to a headwind from the slower rotating gas. So we're clear. Scientists have no material explanation for terrestrial planet formation. What about gas giants? On the screen are Saturn and Jupiter, 2 of the 4 gas giants in our solar system. Can scientists explain their formation? The answer is no. Here's what the literature says. I quote Ball and Kerr. Jupiter is the largest of all the planets, but results in nature now reveal the embarrassing fact that we know next to nothing about how or where it formed. Talk about a major embarrassment for planetary scientists. There, blazing away in the late evening sky, are Jupiter and Saturn, the gas giants that account for 93% of the solar system planetary mass, and no one has a satisfactory explanation of how they were made. On the screen are the 2 smaller gas giants, Uranus and Neptune. Here is what the literature says. According to Birth, astronomers who model the formation of the solar system have kept a dirty little secret. Uranus and Neptune don't exist, or at least computer simulations have never explained how planets as big as the 2 gas giants could form so far from the sun. In summary, scientists have no idea how gas giants formed. What about stars? Let's see what the published scientific literature says about star formation. Studying the formation of sun-like stars by Ladd and Shu, the origin of stars represents one of the most fundamental, unsolved problems of contemporary astrophysics. No one has ever seen a star form, yet the general public believes stars are forming almost daily. Here are a few more quotes. The process by which an interstellar cloud is concentrated and until it is held together gravitationally to become a protostar is not known. Literally hundreds of ideas on how stars are formed have been advanced in the past decades. However, we are still far from any real solutions. The published evidence states there is no materialistic explanation on how stars formed, and no one has ever observed the formation of the star. Yet, the solar nebular hypothesis is sold as a scientific fact to the masses. Why? You're probably wondering what the periodic table has to do with star formation. Well, according to popular science programs, all the elements of the periodic table are a result of stars. They also say that humans and all organic life are a result of stardust as well. This is an absurd conclusion. Let's hear from some of the world's foremost scientists who do not accept the material explanation for the origin of the universe. Frederick Hole, a British astrophysicist, says, "A common-sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super-intellect has monkeyed with the physics as well as the chemistry and biology, and that there is no blind force worth speaking about in nature. The numbers one calculates from the facts seem to be overwhelming as to put this conclusion almost beyond question. Werner von Braun says, "I find it as difficult to understand a scientist who does not acknowledge the presence of a superior rationality behind the existence of the universe as it is to comprehend a theologian who would deny the advances of science. Naturalism cannot account for this kind of complexity in any way. Many of the great intellectuals who study the universe, including the pioneers in the field, reject naturalism as an explanation." So based on what we've discovered so far, we can postulate our human origins from cosmic evolution. Here it is. Nothing creates hydrogen. Hydrogen creates stars that explode to make inorganic chemistry. And then billions of years later, planets are formed made of rocks. The rocks make soup from rainfall. And then an unknown catalyst sparks life into existence, creating all organic life. Voila! Your family tree. So here in summary is what you believe if you believe in evolution. Your granddaddy was soup. Your great-granddaddy was a rock. Your great-great-granddaddy was a planet. Your great-great-great-granddaddy was an element. And your great-great-great-great-granddaddy was a star. And your great-great-great-great-great-granddaddy was hydrogen. And before that, who knows? Personally, I am unaware of any religion that requires more blind faith than evolution. This is why I said up front, evolution is the most absurd religion ever created. I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm trying to drive home the absurdity of believing in cosmic evolution. So in conclusion, cosmic evolution, the facts do not support the theory. Why? Because there is no evidence. Okay, we don't know the origin of hydrogen, the origin of stars, the origin of elements, the origin of planets, the origin of cells. But we do know that cosmic evolution has zero evidence to support their theory. Now let's look at biological evolution. My presentation on biological evolution begins with an explanation of the theory of Darwinian evolution, followed by an explanation of the modern theory known as neo-Darwinism. In this section, we will look at genetic mutation, microevolution, biochemistry, the inner working of the cell, the lack of evidence for ape-to-man evolution, and what many scientists are saying today. Once the complexities of evolution are clear, I will begin to knock the legs out from under biological evolution, exposing it as completely fallacious. Darwinism is a combination of three theories: natural selection, universal common descent, and random variation. Natural selection. The process in nature by which, according to Darwin's theory of evolution, only the organisms best adapted to their environment tend to survive and transmit their genetic characteristics in increasing numbers to succeeding generations, while those less adapted tend to be eliminated. Darwin developed his theory of natural selection from artificial selection, or the breeding of animals. It was well known in Darwin's day that breeding various animals could result in a variation of species. This is evidenced through the breeding of domesticated animals like dogs, sheep, horses, and pigeons. Universal common descent. This theory says all living organisms are descended from one common ancestor. Evolutionary biologists refer to Darwin's theory as the history of life, whereby every organism on Earth came from one single common ancestor by the process of descent with modification. Random variation is the process by which natural conditions could result in the same results as selective breeding. A cold winter, for example, may cause all long-haired sheep to survive to produce the same effect in their offspring as selective breeding. Darwin concluded that natural selection, acting on random variation, was the agent for change that produced all life on Earth, right from the first cell, all bacteria, fungus, viruses, and all flora and fauna. Neo-Darwinism came on the scene when Herman Miller in 1927 mutated the fruit fly, turning flies' halters into wings by using 3 simultaneous mutations. Miller exposed the fruit fly to X-rays, causing the mutation. This was cited as evidence for evolution. The problem is the mutation did not improve the fruit fly. The fruit fly could not survive in the wild. The balancers or halters, which replaced the wings, could not move, which severely impeded function. An honest evaluation of the experiment says mutation breaks things and degrades functions. It certainly did not improve the fruit fly. The entire hopes of neo-Darwinism rests on faulty science and unprovable speculations postulating that copying errors have creative powers. The theory of evolution says the catalyst that drove positive genetic change over time was mutation. Genetic mutation is a scientific fact and no one disputes it. How it is sold to the general public is another matter. Mutations have been studied since 1943. A mutation is a copying error that occurs in one of 6 ways. Substitution is the switching of one kind of nucleotide for another. Deletion is the omission of one or more nucleotides. Insertion is the addition of one or more nucleotides. Inversion is the flipping of a segment of DNA. Gene duplication is the doubling of a region of DNA. Genome duplication is a duplicating of the total DNA of an organism. Copying errors occur in every species. Science has uncovered that human mutation is about 1 per 100 million. So with 3.3 billion base pairs in our DNA, our offspring will have about 33 copying errors. Some species of bacteria replicate at rates as high as 10,000 times of human reproduction, making them ideal for studying mutation. Since 1943, every single bacteria is still a bacteria. There is zero evidence after countless mutations of the advancement of any bacteria. All mutation negatively affects the species by degrading function. It is a scientific fact that mutation does not improve species, so evolution is rendered helpless. The masses believe in evolution based on extrapolation of microevolution, getting people to believe that a change in a species is evidence for a change in phylum. No one disputes microevolution, and natural selection is a fact. What is disputed is that one phylum can become another phylum by mutation or any other mechanism. Here are the evidence for microevolution. We know that dogs came from the gray wolf. Today, according to FCI, we have 340 species of dogs, and according to the American Kennel Club, we have 167 species. Man has played a major role in dog speciation. My point is, a dog is still a dog. The evidence proves biogenesis. Everything produces after its own kind, and that speciation is to be expected. Humans and natural selection played a major role in speciation, not only in dogs, but cattle, horses, pigeons, and a multitude of other species. No one denies natural selection or survival of the fittest. However, there is zero evidence from any field of science that one phyla can become another. Genetic mutation is observable science, and the results have shown 99% negative. When there is a positive effect on a species, it still degrades the overall functions of the species. Don't let anyone deceive you into believing biological evolution is true. There is no evidence, period. Let's talk about biochemistry and cellular complexity. On the left of the screen is a eukaryotic cell, and on the right is a list of organelles within the cell and their core function. The advancement in biochemistry has revealed this unimaginable complexity of the eukaryotic cell. This cell is smaller than a dot on a page and has over 2 billion functioning parts with 20 organelles that work together like a symphony orchestra, with the cell nucleus acting as the conductor. Every cell breathes, eats, excretes, reproduces, and creates and uses energy. Let's look a little deeper. The nucleus is the brain of the cell. It is made of genetic material called chromosomes, which is made of DNA in the form of genes. DNA is the mastermind of all activities and instruction manual, computer-like code for the body's production of proteins. The nucleus contains a super complicated, high-tech computer software program processing chemical messages to control outcomes. The code in DNA is more complex than anything man has ever created, according to Bill Gates. DNA, like computer code or machine code, have one thing in common: specified complexity. Information theorists tell us that anything that has specified complexity, like these codes, requires intelligence. Let's look at the complexity of mitochondria, the energy production of the cell. Every movement in your body, every breath you take, is a result of cellular energy generated in the mitochondria. This energy cell in the body is called ATP, and adenosine triphosphate. The space inside of mitochondria is filled with hundreds of enzymes. An enzyme is a protein manufactured by a cell and is a catalyst in various biological functions. Think of the manufacturing going on here to produce enzymes and energy. This process is more complex than any factory in the world. Let's compare human engineering with a eukaryotic cell. On the right is a 747. It has 5 million parts. On the left is a eukaryotic cell. It has over 2 billion parts. Do you see where I'm going? Is it rational to believe that time and chance could create something 400 times more complex than a 747? I hope you realize that the jet and the cell are both marvels of engineering with extreme levels of specified complexity, not only implying intelligence but demanding it. It should be clear by this stage of the presentation that a superintelligence, the God of the Bible, is behind the specified complexity of the eukaryotic cell. Understanding the complexity of a cell is beyond human comprehension. Now imagine the complexity involved in putting together a human being who has 37 trillion cells consisting of microscopic nanobots with 2 billion parts each. This means that a human being has 14,800 trillion times more parts than a 747. Now consider that humans have 200 different types of cells, 10 integrated systems of the body, including skeletal, muscular, circulatory, respiratory, digestive, excretory, nervous, endocrine, integument, and reproductive. Humans also have 86 billion nerve cells and a master control system, the human brain. Incredible! Just a thought. Is there enough computer power on the entire planet to do the work of one brain? I doubt it. Another puzzling deception is ape-to-human evolution. What does the evidence tell us about that? Ape-to-human evolution is in cartoons, TV shows, and movies, sold as a scientific fact that is indisputable. Am I wrong? Take a look at the pool table. All the supposed bones ever found supposedly linking to man's past would fit on this table. Here are some quotes from atheistic publications. In 1981, Constant Holden wrote in Science magazine, "The primary scientific evidence is a pitifully small array of bones from which to construct man's evolutionary history. One anthropologist has compared the task of that of reconstructing the plot of War and Peace with 13 randomly selected pages." In 1996, Berkeley evolutionary biologist F. Clark Howell wrote, "There is no encompassing theory of human evolution. Alas, there really never has been. The field is characterized by narrative treatments based on little evidence, so it is probably true that an encompassing scenario of human evolution is beyond our grasp now, if not forever." By the way, the evidence against ape-to-man evolution is getting worse every day, yet sold to the general public as a scientific fact. Another falsehood rampant in our culture is that the fossil evidence proves evolution. This is a complete fallacy. The fossil evidence has not shown a rise in complexity over time. The evidence shows complexity from the beginning in all species, followed by variation within the species. There are no known transitional forms that show a rise in complexity, period. Two of the world's largest fossil finds in Canada and in China reveal the following. In 1911, Charles Doolittle Walcott discovered the Burgess Estuary in eastern British Columbia. Walcott's discovery turned Darwinism upside down. The tree was in the opposite direction. Chinese paleontologist J.Y. Chang emphasized there is an apparent contradiction between the Chinese fossils evidence and Darwinism. He also went on to say the Chinese fossils turned Darwin's tree of life upside down. What I'm saying is well known in academia, yet the masses are told the opposite. Why? Another powerful deception that is drilled into our heads is that evolution is a scientific fact and there's no scientists in the world who don't believe it. Actually, many of the greatest scientists in the world from our greatest universities have signed the scientific descent from evolution form as seen on the screen. This includes Harvard, MIT, University of Toronto, and hundreds of others. Check it out, descentfromdarwin.com. I hope I accomplished the goal of this presentation, to get you to question and hopefully reject evolution. If you would like more details about any of the evidence presented, or you'd like to read about the evidence not presented, you have two book options available to you. One, Intellectual Challenge to Evolutionary Biology and Cosmology, and two, The Blind Faith Hypothesis, Intellectual Challenge to Naturalism, theism, pantheism, polytheism, and postmodernism. Please feel free to reach out to me. My contact details are available on my website. Thank you for your time and attention.